Yes, so I am Taylor Wilson West, and I write rom-coms and dark romance. And all of them have sarcasm because that is my love language.
Sarcasm is the best. You can't go wrong with having sarcasm in your books. To start us off, what inspires your writing?
Well, day-to-day life as a plus size person, I wanted to make sure that everybody that has a bigger body, male or female or non-binary, that they have a place to be seen. That's what started this one. Say I Do Sunshine. That was my debut novel, and honestly, I wrote it for fun because my friends were like, "You should write about us," and I was like, "Nobody wants to read about us." Come to find out they really do. So I want to make sure that anybody that's not, stick thin, they still get their happily ever after.
So important because like, you never really only now is we're really seeing the plus size characters come out, and curvy is good. There's nothing wrong with having curves, and it's so good
Absolutely.
to have the representation in the books.
Yes, and all of my characters, they love the dimples, the cellulite, they love it all.
Yeah, and it's perfect. What drew you to writing?
I'm sorry.
What drew you to writing?
So I've always dabbled, but I've never thought like I'm gonna be an author. Um, it was really therapeutic for me as a teenager who had a lot of things going on, um, to just get it out. And so I just started writing these stories about, a bigger girl getting the hot guy or the nerdy guy or whatever. I wrote my own love story over and over and over again. And so it really just stems from like therapeutically. And then once I started writing Sunshine, my friends were like, "Taylor, you have to publish this." And I
Yeah.
was like, "No, this is shit compared to other authors. No." And then my editor was like, "Yes." My editor is actually my really good friend. And when she read it, she was like, "You absolutely have to publish this." Um, so it was a lot of push from my friends to actually like pursue the career. Um, but now that I have, I'm like, okay, I like this a little bit.
People are connecting to my stories, so there's people out there want to read them.
Yes, and that's the most surreal part. I like anytime somebody is like slides into my DMs and they're like, "I love this story. It made me feel so seen." I was like, "Me? I did that?" I still can't believe it. It feels like a fever dream every time it happens. So if you are wanting to slide into my DMs, please do because I it literally makes my day, and then it also feeds my imposter syndrome. Uh,
I think every author, every writer has the imposter syndrome.
oh, absolutely.
How do you choose which characters to center the story around?
Oh, so I am a I'm a pantser. I don't plot, much to my editor's dismay. She gets really irritated. Um, so basically what happens for my process is I have a scene that comes to mind and I have to get it out. So, I write the scene and then I'm like, "Okay, okay." Um, funny enough, that the first scene from Waiting for the Pieces that I ever wrote down was the scene where she was being chased by a murderer.
Fair.
And so that's kinda where that one stemmed, and then, I can't do Firecracker because that one's a spoiler. But Sunshine, the first scene that came to mind was her tripping over something and the guy being like, "Whoa there, you okay?"
Perfect.
And so it just I hate to say that it happens in my brain, but honestly, it just happens in my brain. Sometimes I'll see something out in the world and it just sparks something in my brain, and I'm like, oh, I need to write that down. And then that's how the story is born. I also really love to name people.
Fair enough.
Um,
Names are important.
so they are. I love to name people. So the names are really fun, especially whenever they first come to me and they don't give me a name. Like Fern, she gave me her name. She was always Fern. Um, Funny enough, Sin also gave me her name. And Bellamy was just one that I've loved since the 100,
Yeah.
that TV show. So it's a lot of things that just kind of happen in my daily life that inspire things, um, but not necessarily like the stories themselves.
So do you do much world or character building for your stories? Do you keep like track of every details about your characters, or is it just they're just in your head?
Yeah, so I do keep notes on my characters. I actually have a board in my office. They all have note cards. It's got their name, it's got their characteristics, um, it's got their traumas, it's got their um accomplishments, it's got all of their stuff on there. Because my books are character driven. Um, most of most of my characters are going through something, or they have gone through something, and they're like, this one's not looking for love. Sunshine is like, nope, no thank you, I don't want any part of it. um Ronnie and Finn, both their story is probably the most traumatic. But I love them so much. But they're both going through a lot. And then this one's just sex. This Christmas Pause, it's just sex. Don't take it seriously. I think I even put in the dedication, may your orgasms be plentiful this Christmas season. Um, it's literally just sex, so don't take it seriously. And then Waiting for the Pieces, um, Fern obviously she's being tracked by a murderer. So, that one, she's going through her own drama there. And then I can't tell you about Breaking You because that's a spoiler, but they're all character driven. Um, yes, there's plot, obviously, because you've got to have it. But my characters do a lot of the guiding as I'm writing, which is why I'm such a panster, not a planster. Um, so I think that it's just whatever they tell me is going on is whatever I write. I like to say I'm their vessel. Like they're telling me the story and I'm
I've
just
heard
writing
that
it.
though, like characters they'll take you on whatever journey they want you to to
They
write.
really do. And like sometimes I'm like, okay, I'm gonna plan this. And then I plan something and they go, whoop. And I'm like, oh, okay.
It's easy
Okay.
not to
That's what I get.
plan.
That's what I get.
Easier to plan nothing so they can just have on their way.
Really honestly, yes. That is how I write. And it's a lot of fun when I turn it into my editor because she's like, I'm gonna have to spend a month on this just to make sure the timeline's right. And I'm like, I know, I'm sorry, I love you.
You catch the things I sort of missed. It's all right.
Absolutely. I pay her very well though, so she should be good.
Did you have a favorite moment to write in any of your books that have stood out to you?
Oh, I think each book is special in its own way. Um, I will never forget Bellamy and her story. Mainly because that one is based on me, and my experiences. Um, so that one just holds a special place in my heart anyways, because it's my debut. It's it's got a lot of me in it. Um, but they each have like a special moment in them that's so specific to those characters. Um, so I don't know if I have a favorite.
Like
Um,
picking a favorite child, it's quite mean.
it really is. Um, but I think, oh God, they're all so special. But I think my favorite scene happens in Firecracker. Um, they're they're both going through some things, and they're both not vulnerable with each other yet. And there's there's just this scene where they're getting their traumas out with each other, and it made me cry while I wrote it, and that's very rare. I'm not a crier. And then my proofreader, she's like bawling, sending me all these messages like, I hate you. Why are you doing this? Um, but of course, all of my books have a happily ever after. I only have one planned that may not have a happily ever after, but that one that's just the way the story's going. But most all of my books will have a happily ever after. Not a happily for now, but a happily ever after.
Always the important part is the emotional impact on the books. And you
Oh,
certainly do
absolutely.
that. Which of your characters do you relate to the most and why? I know you did
Well, that
say
would be
but
Bellamy.
thank you.
Just because whenever I wrote it and my friends were like, you should write our stories, things like that. Um, they're the three main characters in the series. Um, actually used to work with them. So we would see each other every single day. We'd got to lunch together every single day. Um, and so I put a lot of my traumas into this book. Um, and it was really nice that they were like, I still want to read more. Um, Even though they already knew the background, they already knew like those things about me because we're best friends.
Yeah.
And so I think that that one is the one that I most relate with. Just because it's got a lot of me in it because the character Bellamy is based on me. And then the character Ronnie is based on my best friend Tina. And then there's a third book. Um, it's not it's not ready yet. But there will be a third book. And it'll be Xavier's book, and he is mentioned in the first two books. And everybody's like, I need that book. I need that book.
Need it
And
now.
he's based on my friend John, and he is an absolute hoot. Everybody loves him. So everybody's really excited for Xavier's story, and I'm like, oh, I hope I can do it justice.
Do you find writing female characters or male characters easier?
That's a hard question. I think it depends on the character and what they're going through. Um, for Breaking You, Talon's point of view was so easy for me to write. I flew through his point of view. Um, and then Sin was a little bit more difficult because she had a lot of things going on that she was like, I'm not going to share those with you yet, but they're there. Um, and Aaron's was a little bit difficult to write too, just because it was my first ever time writing in a male point of view. Um, but I think it really just depends on the characters that I'm writing at the time. Waiting for the Pieces is actually not dual point of view. It's my only book that is one point of view, and that's just Fern's story. Um, Although everybody loves Creed and they're like, I needed Creed in this book. If I put Creed in that book would be like 800 pages because Creed has so much to say. And all of my readers that love Creed, they're gonna crucify me after they hear this. But yeah, he would have a lot to say if I let him.
And I bet they're all like, why don't you just give us his story then?
They absolutely would. Even though they already know what happens in the
Yeah,
book, they would be
I'll still
like,
read
they would
it.
be like, I need it now. And I'm like, oh, I can't do that.
Take too long.
Yeah, well, Creed is also he's very cut and dry,
Yeah.
and he is I don't know if anybody really wants to be in his head. I think they want to.
But I don't
But
think I really want
he loves his woman and he's very naughty.
to.
So his book would be a lot of fucking. I mean, that's really what it would be.
Pretty much.
A lot of that and a lot of killing.
Yeah, fair. Has writing and publishing books changed the way you see yourself?
I don't think it's changed the way I see myself, but I do think it has changed the way that I see others. Just like strangers on the street, I'm like, what's their story?
Yeah.
Um, because everybody's got a story.
Yeah.
And I think that whenever I go out in public, which is not very often because I have ridiculous anxiety, um, that's like the first thing that I'm like, I wonder what their story is. I wonder what they're going through, things like that. I wonder if they're happy or if they're sad. But as far as seeing myself differently, I don't think so. I think that I've always just kind of been who I am,
Yep.
which is, strange, but that's just who I am.
And there's nothing wrong with people watching. I like doing people watching too. I'm like, what's going on in their lives?
Yeah, my husband's the worst. He's always people watching. And my oldest daughter, she also loves to people watch. So I'm very careful where I take them.
Are there any books or authors that inspired you to become a writer?
Oh, so I have met many I've met many authors, and I fangirl over so many authors. I got to meet Kennedy Ryan last weekend,
Oh,
and
yeah.
that was insane. Um, I've met Bridget Kimmerer like 4 or 5 times, and every time she is absolutely amazing. She's full of grace and she's so humble.
Yeah.
Like, there are so many authors that I could say have inspired me. Um, because I grew up in the young adult world of Rachel Kane and the Morganville Vampires, um, Jennifer L. Armentrout in the Luxon series, and her White Hot Kiss series. Well, it's not White Hot Kiss, it's the Darkest Element series. Um, I also really enjoyed Kelly Armstrong as a kid. So I think a lot of those authors really inspired me to tell my story without actually giving it to anybody. Like whenever I would write for just therapeutic purposes.
Mhm.
Um, so I think that that was really the baseline of where it started. That's where my obsession started. Obviously, I have a problem. Um, but I think that's where my obsession started. And Alison Noel, and her Immortal series, I ate that up. I distinctly remember God, I want to say I was a freshman in high school, and I emailed her. Um, I looked up her website. I emailed her agent, and I was like, "These books need to be a movie." And I'm like 14 years old. I have no business emailing anybody, especially an adult. And and I got an email back, and I was like, "Oh my gosh!" And they were like, "Oh, thank you so much." It was really sweet. Um, but I think that's where it all stemmed for me is there were all of these characters that were getting their happily ever after, even though they were also going through something.
Yeah.
And I was like, I want to make people feel the way that I felt while I was reading these books. So I hope that I'm doing that.
Yeah.
Probably not as well as JLA, but
Any old books find their people to read and who connect with the characters. Or
yes, absolutely.
what advice would you give to a writer working on their first book?
Do it. Don't let anybody tell you anything, don't let anybody tell you anything. You're gonna find your own process. You're gonna find your tribe. Once you do, love them hard, make sure they're appreciated. Um, I think honestly, I would not have published my first book if I did not have my friends pushing me to do it. Um, so I wouldn't be sitting here and doing an interview with 5 books under my belt. Um, So I really think that you just need to find your support system. And whenever I say your support system, I mean people that are going to support you because they want you to succeed, not people that are going to support you because they want something from you.
Yeah.
And I think that was a hard lesson I had to learn. Especially because I am a little bit younger. Um Not really like young, but I'm not a baby author, but I'm, smaller, and I had to really like guard me, but also whenever I found like my 3 best friends and my editor, like I really had to make sure that everything was they were for me and not for what I could give them. So that's what I think is the most important thing, is find your people and make sure they're for you. Make sure they are all about you. And say Merry Christmas, Boss, I forgot. My best friend Ashley, that one is for her. Because She was like, "I'm never gonna find anybody to love me." And I was like, "Yeah, you are, right there." Um, and so she thought it was absolutely hilarious. And the main character's name is Ashton, because I call her Ash, and that's what he calls her in the book. But it's those are really inspired by real life things. And then these are just my fun ones. I love them so much. I love them all so much.
Can't be.
I really can't. And especially because they're so different. Like these are romantic comedies and then these are dark romance. And when I say dark romance, I mean like there's lots of blood and guts.
Perfect dark romance. The good one.
But they all have sex.
Yeah,
It
that's the important part, the fun part of the one.
is. It is.
What's your favorite writing snack or drink?
Oh my goodness. My cup is always full of cheer wine. Always. That's it's actually made here in North Carolina, and it's my favorite drink of choice. It's my go-to other than water, um because it's important to drink your water. And as far as snacks, I'm an equal opportunist. I love snacks. Whatever my husband brings me is what I'll eat.
Anything good.
Yes, anything good. And it really just kind of depends on what I'm writing. I know that sounds really strange, but if I'm writing like dark romance, I really want chocolate. I don't know why. I think that's just something in my brain that's
Comfort.
like you need that oxytocin from the chocolate.
Something sweet to complement
Yes.
the dark.
Yes.
Do you play music while you write? And if you do, what's your favorite music?
I do. I do. I love all kinds of music. I am very open to all kinds of music. My go-to changes depending on what I'm writing. If I'm in dark romance, I'm listening to a lot of um punk, a lot of like pop punk or um like alternative music, something that like really gets me going. Um like Neck Deep or Amity Affliction, um, stuff like that. And then when I'm writing romantic comedies, especially because they're set in the South, I listen to a lot of country music and I do have playlists for them. Um, so I normally just like keep those on repeat as I'm writing, just because they get me like in the space of where I need to be and I don't have to listen to my kids screaming at each other.
Even better.
Yeah.
Do you find yourself sort of like singing along, or you can just tune out the lyrics?
Oh no, I absolutely sing. Sometimes I sing out loud and my husband's like, "What are you doing?" He's like, are you listening to music or are you writing?" Both.
I can do both. I can multitask.
Yeah. I mean, that's honestly authors, that's your job is to multitask.
Yeah. And my final question is, who has been the biggest supporter of your writing, other than your friends?
Ooh, that's a hard one. Honestly,
Mhm.
this is gonna sound really strange, but my grandmother and my mom and my stepdad. They have read every single thing that I have written, and even the dirty book, uh, which was very whenever so my stepdad read Firecracker and he critiqued it. He gave me feedback. Um which is so strange, especially if like you know who my stepdad is. He's also a very cut and dry person. And so it was strange that he was like, "I really liked it, but I think you could do this or you could do that. It would make it a little bit better." And I was like, "Okay." So I think that and my grandmother, she also reads everything that I write, and my mom does too. My mom's always like, "Okay, when am I getting the book? Okay, when am I getting the book?"
Not written yet.
Yes, I know. She's so impatient. I wonder where I get it. But yeah, those three really have they've supported they have even like gone out and pre-ordered the book like at Barnes and Nobles. Like they walk in and they're like, "I need this Taylor Wilson West book. Can you get it for me?" And well, because like I've told them, indie authors don't really get on those shelves unless people
Yeah.
ask. So they all three go in and ask, and it is it's so surreal to see my books on shelves, which is that's wild. I'm like, that's my name.
It's so great that your close family does really support you.
Yes.
Does surprise me that they've read your books, but
Every single thing. And like my mom even has some friends that have read my books and they're like, "What is going on? Is she okay?" And mom's like, "Yeah, she's fine."
this is how it's therapeutic for her. It's all good.
Yeah, and I mean, don't get me wrong, they've liked the books, but they're just kind of like, especially these two, they're like, "Okay, is Taylor okay?" My mom's like, "Yeah, she's fine."
So it's her joy. It's what she wants to write. It doesn't
Yes,
matter if no one
absolutely.
else if you don't like it.
And that's another thing I think it's hard for authors is especially new indie authors is not every book is for everyone. And
Mm,
it took me a really long time to come to peace with that. Um because I know that um I know that plus size romance is not for everybody,
yeah.
and that's okay. I know that not everybody thinks plus size is desirable. I, however, think all bodies are desirable.
Mhm.
Um and that's what I want to showcase in all of my books. So I think that's another thing you had asked about giving advice to authors. I think that's another thing is just knowing that no matter how much of your heart and soul you put into a book, it may not be for somebody, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. It will find the people that it needs to, and those people will love you very hard.
Yes. Very poignant and important things for people to know. It's one of the hardest things to to actually get through your head and accept. But
It really is because you're like, you should just love my book. I put so much into it.
read it and
Um,
love it.
And that's okay. And I think being an avid reader myself,
Yeah.
I had also come to terms as a reader with I'm not going to like every book, and that's okay. So I
Yeah.
had to also morph that into my author brain.
And get yeah, and it's sometimes hard.
Yes. Oh yes, absolutely. Because I'm like, why don't you like it?
Enjoy it, please.
Yes. And that's okay.
Yeah.